All right. So obviously the goal today is to kind of build upon each of our sessions, right? So we heard Francine really dive into how do we start to listen to God's call in our life? How do we start to know what it is that He's wanting us to believe about ourselves and to believe in ourselves? And of course, Kate talked us really articulately through what are the things that we can control, we can influence, we can own. And I really want us to dive into being ready to live this purpose and to understand what do we need to start to do to build that foundation. So as we start walking that purpose, as we start moving forward, and as Brandy will talk to us about doing our thing, we have to have that solid foundation. And so for me, a little bit of my background, um, I am a self-proclaimed perfectionist, much like I think many of us here. My dissertation was on perfectionism. So I know very well what it means to want to control circumstances and to feel out of control when I don't have that grasp on my life. I'm a puzzle geek. I'm a fast car aficionado. I love driving too fast. And I know a lot of us here are parents and moms. I've got a fur baby, and his name is Tucker, and that's him. He's trying to do a podcast. He jumped up in my chair one day. I took him, I let him have my podcast camera there. But and just in terms of just my education and background, my PhD is in health and human performance. My master's is in sports psychology. So I work with clients on the element of nutrition, on mindset shift, on just really learning how to fuel your purpose, both mentally and physically. Fitness nutrition specialist and a strength and conditioning specialist. So I really try to fuse that mental and physical component to help people take their performance to the next level. And what I've really found through that is that establishing that foundation from a nutrition standpoint, and in our small group, one of the ladies shared about just taking care of herself is something that she knows she has control over and she has influence over. And I think that is so, so important. But I didn't get here overnight. I struggled for a long time with how to establish that foundation and how to make sure that I was building my life on the right things. And, for the first 30 years of my life, things looked pretty perfect. They went pretty much how I'd planned. I was a gifted athlete. I excelled socially, academically, went to grad school, private school education my whole life. My family was very supportive. I grew up in a Christian home. I traveled, I got married, we bought a house, we owned a business. From the facade, everything looked perfect. The accomplishments, the goals, the dreams. I always knew that they were a result of the gifts that he had given me. I live still today with humility and integrity. Those are two of my core values. But in the process of pursuit, I lost sight of the provider. I got complacent in my walk and in my faith. I took him for granted, and I looked up one day and I realized despite everything I had, despite everything that what many women would dream of, I was miserable. And I realized that my life was empty, as full as it looked. And the ground finally gave way. This is a timeline from the summer of 2018. I went on a wooden roller coaster at some random amusement park in the middle of Kentucky, and my world flipped upside down, literally and figuratively. And I knew when I stepped off that wooden roller coaster that it was not just physical pain that I was feeling, but it was deep emotional and spiritual pain. By September of 2018, I was sitting in a hospital bed waiting for spine surgery at 37 years old. I had a full herniation at my L4, L5 vertebrae. As I walked out of that surgery, the doctor said, "Your spine looked like a 55-year-old construction worker." That was not a compliment about my work ethic, let me tell you that. I had broken my body. I had trained it too hard. I had not fed it what it needed. In October, not even a month out of back surgery, a week after my 9th wedding anniversary, my marriage ended. And if I was honest, it had been over for a long time, but this time he left with a suitcase and I sat there and it was quiet and I was alone and scared. By November of that same year, I checked myself into an outpatient eating disorder treatment facility. I had struggled 20 years in silence with anorexia, overexercise, my food rules, my body, they were all consuming. I weighed 95 pounds at the time. In March of 2019, not even 6 months later, I had a massive car accident. I was leaving the gym after a early morning 5 a.m. workout. The lights weren't even on yet, the traffic lights, and I came up to a blinking yellow, and this girl sped right through a blinking red light, and I hit her head on. If I'd gotten there a second sooner, she would have gone right into my driver's side. Neither of us would be standing here. He was watching over us that day, and we both walked away. My car didn't, but we both walked away. Not a couple months later, I started having really bad neck pain, and I assume it was partially from the car accident, partially from just, again, my history of overtraining and not taking care of myself. But I go in for an MRI. I just went to the orthopedic doc and said, "I think we need to do some C-spine imaging. Something's going on with my neck." As I'm walking out to my car, I get a phone call from the imaging facility. "You need to come back in here. We've got to do a full brain scan." They had seen a mass on my brain stem from the MRI and wanted to do additional testing. Turns out they don't really know what it was. Nobody was willing to biopsy it. It was right on my brainstem. They did additional tests. I've been monitoring it now every 6 months. They're calling it a brain lesion. They assume it's been there since I was born, but since I don't have any previous MRIs, they can't really say. But my mom did tell me that when I was little, I had seizures, and the church prayed over me for weeks and they just stopped. My guess is that that had been there forever. And again, just someone watching over me. But that 24-hour period between the MRI and finding out what it was just quiet. We all know what happened in 2020. COVID hits. The whole world was quiet and lonely. We were all scared. Not long after lockdown, I started having all kinds of other pain, back pain, hip pain. I mean, I just chased it around. Every day I woke up and there was a new pain. I chased it so hard, but I could never catch it. I went to every hip spine specialist in Nashville, Birmingham. I flew to the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota. Nobody had answers. I tried injections, medication, physical therapy, acupuncture, massage, PRP, you name it. I paid for it. Nothing worked. And I wanted to give up so many times. Here I was, 40 years old, back surgery, divorce, eating disorder, near fatal car accident, C-spine herniation, unidentifiable brain lesion, chronic pain, COVID. How do you keep going? How do you keep going after that? How could a God of love and mercy, the giver of life, take all of that? All I felt like I had left was loneliness, merciless pain. Many times I could not see a reason to keep going. It was no life. It wasn't the life I wanted. Every time I was ready to say enough, I could just hear this voice, "Be still and know." I started out going to Zoom services with my parents during COVID. And I just realized my body was broken. My family was shattered. My faith was non existent. My rules, my workouts, my food, they had been a prison that I could not escape. And the more I tried to control everything, the more I realized I controlled nothing. Does that sound familiar? So I put a stake in the ground. This is me getting baptized just a couple years ago. I had been baptized as a teenager, but it's just that box you check. I don't know that I knew what it meant, but what I knew is I needed to start again. I needed to reestablish my life. He had a plan. My pain had become my purpose. My struggle became my strength. And what's amazing, as my faith grew, my body healed. I mean, I'm still old. I still got creaks and cracks when I wake up, but it's not like it was. As my body healed, I could walk with purpose again. And as I walked with purpose, I could feel that rock solid footing at my feet. Because this time I wasn't going to build my life on faulty ground. Like last time, I just knew I needed a do over, and this do over, I was going to get it right. So I built my life on the right foundation. And two of those principles I want to talk to you guys about today. The first one is staying hungry for the word. I told you I got complacent. I'd grown up. We went to Sunday school. We went to Wednesday night. We went to Sunday night. It wasn't lack of education. It wasn't lack of exposure. It was other things became more important. And anything, and my husband was also not a Christian, and that also really pulled me away. That was a big detour because it was just not a fight I wanted to have. And the second principle is to fuel your goals in the body that's going to get you there. Because if you have big dreams and you're not feeding those dreams and you're not taking care of yourself and you're not prioritizing your health, then you're not going to get very far. I saw that in myself, and I coach people that way every day. My coaching has drastically shifted because I recognize the need to shift that performance mindset. So when we talk about staying hungry for the word, the things that really resonate with me, and I hope you'll find your groove here with however you need to stay hungry. But I've got some situations that are pretty common for me. And I've got verses that just stay in my mind when I feel that tug of negativity or fear or anxiety or focusing on the wrong things at the wrong times. These are what bring me back to center. So for a lot of us, body image, picking ourselves apart, being our own worst critic, not loving what we see in the mirror every day. I mean, I'm not never going to turn cartwheels probably at what I see in the mirror, but I can appreciate and respect that the body he gave me is the body I'm meant to have. And so Psalm 139 is one that I come back to a lot, just when I feel myself wanting to nitpick, wanting to be unappreciative, wanting to be my own worst critic, is just remembering that he knitted me together just the way that I'm supposed to be. And I am perfectly imperfect. I am fearfully and wonderfully made. And that for me is a daily reminder. The second one is these empty idols make worshipers empty. I was idolizing the scale. I was idolizing my schedule. I was idolizing my Saturday nights. I was putting much more focus on earthly things that are fleeting. What was I chasing? What was I chasing? And then for when I'm weak, then I'm strong. I mean, that for us today is the whole purpose of this summit, right? The things that we felt like have made us broken, have left us weak, have left us searching. That's where we find our strength. In our struggles is where we find our strength. So that has, for me, been a verse that I've used my whole life. And then lastly, joy comes in the morning. I'm an early bird. I'm a get to the gym at 5 a.m.er. But for a long time, I came first. Get up, get my workout in, get my day going, have my coffee. Like, where was he in that? And so shifting that focus and remembering I need to give him the attention first and take care of that before I take care of myself. And that's been a huge shift for me. And it's just every day the intentionality of starting my day in the right way with the right foundation and the right footing has allowed me to stay hungry for that. So I think this is one practice that's been really helpful for me. And I challenge you to maybe identify where the areas that you struggle, because your struggles certainly may not be mine, but are there verses that resonate with you that you can keep in your back pocket? If you got to write them down, if you got to voice record them, play them back to yourself, whatever makes that helpful for you. And I also listen to worship music in my car because I have really bad road rage. And so if I have that playing all day, like, I'm staying present and centered, and it just makes me all day be worshiping. And just having that positivity just playing throughout the day is super helpful for me as I get in and out of my car, as I go into work and come back out, as I go into the grocery, and the way I treat cashiers, the way that I respond to people when they're being impatient or frustrating me. So I think just having little nuggets of knowledge that can really resonate is super helpful. And then the second part of this foundation is fueling your goals and the body to get you there. And that means rejecting this diet culture. And what I mean by that is not chasing a scale, because you know what? When we put ourselves in a calorie deficit, when we start restricting calories or chasing a number or trying to make our body shift in unhealthy, unnatural ways, we're starving our mental function, we're starving our digestion, we're starving our muscle mass, we're starving our ability to walk strong and live strong. So if you can start to embrace a performance mindset as opposed to a weight loss mindset, if these are goals that you're striving for, what's going to allow me to keep doing the things I want to do for the rest of my life? What's going to make me the strongest, most resilient version of myself? Because I guarantee you, post 40, it gets harder and harder to put on muscle and maintain muscle. And I fight this battle every day with clients. Like, I want to lose weight. Well, do you want to lose weight or do you want to get stronger? What are you really after? And I think that's hard to identify because of the cultural message that we get, because of the focus that is. But I think if you try to think about every choice you make, is this fueling my goals? Is this fueling my priorities? Is this honoring him and the body that he gave me? And is it allowing me to continue to walk the purpose in a strong and healthy way? And that message for me has really helped me fight through some of my battles with food and overexercise and not resting and recovering and doing all the things that are going to allow me to continue to be the best version of myself. And then modeling that message. I had a client not too long ago, and she's like, man, I am so diligent to get up, get my girls' lunches packed, make sure they have what they need for soccer practice, make sure they're hydrated, make sure they have all their snacks. But I never take time to do that for myself. I'm always last. And as a parent, I totally get that. Like, that's how you're wired. But we've got to change. We just talked about that next generation. When we model that mom should be last, then when they become moms, they're going to put themselves last. And so as hard as it is, I see it with my nurses, my teachers, my moms, all my caregivers, that's just hardwired to be last on the priority list. but starting to model, like, it matters. Everybody needs the opportunity to take care of their body, to move their body, to fuel their body. Then I think we can start shifting that next generation conversation, and then we give freedom and we give permission to do that for themselves as they get older as well. And so I think that's super important. And so again, thinking about where maybe are you falling short on these action items in terms of your health, your nutrition, your fitness, because this is foundational. And I know they seem so unrelated, but for me, these were the pinnacle points. I had to take care of my body or I couldn't be the coach that he's gifted me to be because I wasn't present. I didn't have the energy. I couldn't put in the work. And now it's just been a game changer. And so I think for you guys today, what I really want to help you walk through is how do we build a foundation that won't falter, that'll hold up as we start to build and grow upwards. And so when we break out, we're going to build a foundation. So this is John Wooden's pyramid of success. That he's one of my all-time favorite coaches, idolize him as a leader, as a team builder. He built this pyramid of success for his basketball teams. And that last line he calls the foundation. And the two end blocks are the cornerstones. Try to make this a little bigger. So, sorry, let's jump. When we break out into our groups, we're basically just going to pull out that bottom row as the foundation. And I want you guys to fill in what your blocks would be. So if you were to establish the values, the characteristics, the skills that you feel like you're lacking, or maybe you already have, but that you would identify as foundational for your structure as you work towards your ultimate potential, where would those blocks fall? Because if those are faltering, if you look at that as like a Jenga game, right? A lot of those center blocks you could probably pull out and that structure would still stand. Okay. But that foundation, if you try to take one of those away, that's going to fall real quick. So those are the non-negotiables. Those are the values, the characteristics, the skills that have to be solidly rooted before you start to build anything on top of it. And so coaches, when we break out, if you'll just walk them through and wordsmith it, throw it into Chat GPT, whatever you got to do, like whatever the words are, if you feel like you're kind of not sure exactly what you're trying to say, then certainly use your group too to try to wordsmith that a little bit. So that's where we'll go with this. And we'll break out, we'll come back. Looks like it's 12, so we'll have about 15 minutes in our groups, and then I'll see you back here.